What's up, guys? To another stream. I got my Tim Hortons crappy coffee. How fucked up this is, bud. How does the character mechanic work in CK3? And how does it work for children and stuff?
In Crusader Kings 3, characters are the heart of the game. Every character is defined by a complex web of traits, attributes, and genetics that dictate how they behave, how they are perceived by others, and how they function as a ruler or vassal. Here is a breakdown of how the character system works, specifically regarding development in children. 1.
Like, how does the two parents make a kid thing, and how does that work, though? Like, say, how does that work? Like, Um, how does genetics work in the game? How does genetics, attitude, attributes, behavior, how does all that work?
In Crusader Kings 3, the genetics and child development systems are two separate, distinct mechanics that interact to shape your heir. Here is the breakdown of how the game handles the biology and the upbringing of your children. 1. The genetic system, the inherited part. When a child is born, the game generates their stats and traits based on their parents' genetic profile. This is the congenital trait system. What is inherited? Only specific congenital traits, marked with a green or red icon, are passed down through DNA. These include things like genius, beautiful, Herculean, or negative ones like club-footed or dwarf. The chance factor. Inheritance is not 100%. It is a percentage-based roll at the moment of birth. Both parents have the trait. Very high chance, approximately 80%, to pass it on, and often a chance to upgrade it, e.g., intelligent parents producing a genius child. One parent has the trait. Moderate chance, approximately 25 to 50%. Neither parent has it. There is a tiny random chance for a child to be born with a trait, like a mutation, but it is rare. Inactive traits. Sometimes a character carries a hidden version of a trait. They don't show the icon, but they can still pass that gene to their children. This is why you might see a genius child born to two intelligent parents who didn't show the genius icon themselves. Inbreeding. If you marry relatives, the game tracks the number of shared ancestors. A lower number of unique ancestors drastically increases the risk of negative congenital traits appearing. 2. Personality and behavior, the raised part.
The inbreeding part, how does that work, though?
In Crusader Kings 3, the game uses a specific ancestor count system to calculate inbreeding risks. It isn't just about being related, it's about how many unique ancestors a child has in their family tree. Here's the breakdown of how the game tracks and punishes inbreeding. 1. The unique ancestor mechanic. The game looks back through the character's family tree, typically over the previous 5 generations. How it is calculated. The game counts the number of distinct individuals who are ancestors of the child. The perfect tree. In a healthy, non-inbred family tree, you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, and 16 great-great-grandparents. If all these people are different individuals, you have a high number of unique ancestors, and the risk of inbreeding is 0%. The inbred tree. When family members marry each other, e.g., siblings, cousins, or uncle, niece, the same people appear in the family tree multiple times. The number of unique ancestors drops. 2. The risk thresholds. As the number of unique ancestors decreases, the game triggers a math check for the inbred trait. Once the number of unique ancestors drops below 32 out of a possible 30 slots in the previous 4 generations, the risk begins to climb exponentially. Unique ancestors, risk level 32 plus, 0% risk, healthy, 28 to 31. Low risk, 23 to 27. Moderate risk, 18 to 22. High risk, 17 or fewer. Near guaranteed inbred trait, 3. What happens if they are inbred? If a child rolls the inbred trait, they suffer severe penalties that make it very difficult to play as them. Massive stat penalties. It hits all attributes, diplomacy, martial, etc., significantly. Health penalty. They are much more likely to die young or suffer from frail health. Fertility penalty. It often makes the character sterile or significantly lowers their chance to have children, which is the game's way of ending the bad genetic line. 4. Why do people do it anyway? Players often ignore the risk for one primary reason: trait consolidation. Because congenital traits, like genius or beautiful, are passed down via DNA, marrying close relatives is the fastest way to keep those traits in your dynasty. If you have a genius son and a genius daughter, marrying them together ensures the genius trait is 100% present in the next generation's gene pool. The risk is a trade-off. You are gambling on getting a super genius versus rolling a severely disabled heir who might end your line entirely. Pro tips for inbreeding. The Blood Dynasty Legacy. If you unlock the Blood Legacy track using Dynasty Renown, you can eventually take a perk that significantly reduces the chance of negative congenital traits. This makes inbreeding much safer. Check the tooltip. Before marrying 2 people, look at the marriage screen. If there is a risk of inbreeding, the game will usually display a warning icon or text about close kin or inbreeding risk in the character interaction window. Don't overdo it. Unless you are specifically trying to build a perfect trait stacking line, it is almost always better for the long-term health of your dynasty to marry outside of your immediate family to keep the ancestor count high. Does that help you understand why your characters might be turning out inbred when you keep the marriages inside the family?
Is Crusaders King 3 a complex coded game, though?
Crusader Kings 3 is a highly complex game, but it is important to distinguish between coded complexity, the technical side, and gameplay complexity, the user side. 1. The coded complexity. From a developer perspective, CK3 is a massive data-driven simulation. The engine. It runs on the Clausewitz engine with the Gemini toolset, which is specifically designed by Paradox Interactive to track tens of thousands of individual objects, characters, titles, religions, cultures, simultaneously. Scripting versus hard coding. The game is built using a mix of hard-coded systems, things you can't touch, like the core logic of the game loop, and a massive accessible scripting language. This is why mods are so powerful for CK3. The developers essentially built an internal coding language that allows modders to trigger events, change character stats, or alter map data using readable text files. The moving parts. Every single character on the map is a living entity. They have their own hidden DNA, personality traits, sexual orientation, goals, and opinion modifiers toward every other character they know. The game is constantly running checks in the background, calculating genetic inheritance, calculating stress levels, and running AI decision-making for thousands of people at once. 2. Gameplay complexity, the learning curve. For you as a player, the complexity feels different. The Tooltip Magic CK3 is widely considered the most accessible grand strategy game Paradox has ever made. It uses a nested tooltip system. If you hover over a word, you get a definition. If you hover over a word inside that definition, you get another one. This allows the game to be incredibly deep without requiring you to memorize a 200-page manual. Easy to learn, hard to master. The basics are simple. Manage your heir, keep your vassals happy, and expand your realm. The complexity comes from the emergent gameplay. Because everything is simulated, genetics, personality, religion, the game creates unexpected story moments. You aren't just playing against a math equation. You're playing against a web of family drama and political AI. Sandbox nature. Because it is a sandbox, there is no windscreen. The game is as complex as you want it to be. You can ignore 90% of the game's depth and just focus on your family. Or you can dive into the nitty gritty of culture hybridization, religious reform, and army compositions. Is it too complicated? It can feel overwhelming for the first 10 to 20 hours. You will likely feel like the game is playing you rather than you playing it. However, once you understand the core loops dynasty, family, realm, land, and faith, religion the complexity begins to feel like a toolbox for creativity rather than a wall of math. In short, yes, it is a very sophisticated piece of software under the hood, but the developers went to great lengths to make that complexity visible and understandable to the player. Does the game feel overwhelming right now, or are you starting to get a handle on the main?
No, I had it for like 3 years or 2 years since it released on PS5, and I enjoy the game. I just like how free it is. You do anything you want in the game.
It sounds like you've really embraced the sandbox nature of the game. That freedom is exactly what makes Crusader Kings 3 so special. It's less of a game you win, and more of a story generator where you decide if your dynasty becomes a beacon of light or a house of backstabbing monsters. Since you've been playing for a while on PS5, you've probably seen some of the wildest emergent stories the game can throw at you. Whether you're playing as a Viking raider, an intrigue heavy Byzantine schemer, or just trying to keep your family from killing each other, the complex coding we talked about is basically just the engine that makes your specific weird dynasty history possible. Since you've been at it for a couple of years now, what has been your most memorable anything goes moment?
I almost completed the Roman Empire, but it decided to revolt and it shattered the Eastern Rome, so I couldn't make the Roman Empire anymore.
That is the classic Crusader Kings 3 heartbreak moment. There is nothing quite as painful as having your dream of restoring the Roman Empire snatched away by a massive, game shattering revolt just when you were on the finish line. When a realm that big shatters, it's usually because the game's faction system reached a tipping point. Since you've been playing for a few years, you know that the free nature of the game also means the AI is constantly calculating if you are weak enough to be overthrown. That specific scenario, the shattering of the East, happens because of a few underlying mechanical triggers that the game is constantly running. The powerful vassal threshold. Once you hold an empire as massive as Rome, you have so many powerful dukes and kings that it is mathematically impossible to keep them all at 100 opinion. If a group of them forms a dissolution or independence faction, no, the game triggers a massive war. Succession stress. Often these revolts happen right after your ruler dies. Your new heir starts with short reign penalties and low opinion, and the AI factions take that split second of weakness to demand their independence. The empire limit. The game is coded to simulate the historical instability of large empires. It's designed to make it hard to hold on to something as big as the Roman Empire, because, in reality, communication and control over such a vast distance were historically nearly impossible. It's the ultimate CK3 lesson. You weren't just playing a strategy game, you were playing a high stakes management sim where one bad succession or one ignored faction can undo 200 years of work in a single year. Since you enjoy that level of freedom, are you the type of player who tries to save the empire by reconquering it piece by piece? Or do you prefer to just roll with the chaos and start a new, smaller dynasty somewhere else to see what happens?
Guys, I got an idea. What if we do something? Mary Jane. Mary Jane. I just drink my coffee right now. Oh, after I get my riffing job, I can't wait. Oh. All right, boys, this is gonna be another snooze update. And how do facial features work in the game, though?
Facial features and appearance in CK3 work through a complex DNA system that operates behind the scenes to simulate genetics. Unlike older games that just picked from a list of pre-made faces, CK3 uses a 3D model engine that procedurally generates unique faces based on parental data. Here is how the genetics of appearance actually works. 1. The DNA string. Every character in the game is assigned a long, hidden string of text called DNA. This code contains specific numerical values for every physical aspect of their head and body. Facial structure, nose shape, jaw width, forehead height, eye depth, mouth position, and ear shape. Pigmentation, skin color, eye color, and hair color. Body, height, weight, which can change based on lifestyle events, and physical proportions. 2. How children inherit appearance. When a child is born, the game blends the DNA of the two parents. It isn't just picking one parent's face over the other. It calculates a weighted average of the numerical values in their DNA codes.
That's how complex the
Dominant
game
versus
is.
recessive. While the game doesn't use true biological Mendelian genetics for every single curve of the nose, it does use a dominant/recessive logic for specific features. A child might inherit the eye color of a grandparent rather than a parent if that gene was dormant in the parent's DNA code. The mutation factor, even with parents who look very similar, the game includes a degree of randomness. This is why siblings in CK3
Cornelius.
often share a family resemblance, the same family nose or jawline, but are still clearly distinct individuals. Congenital traits. Certain traits, like beautiful or hideous, act as overrides. If a child inherits the beautiful trait, the game modifies their DNA parameters to move their facial features toward the attractive spectrum defined by the game's artists. 3. Aging and lifestyle. The face you see is not static, it evolves. Aging. As characters get older, the game applies age modifiers to their DNA. Skin wrinkles, hair grays, and hairlines recede. This is why a character looks very different at 16 compared to 60. Puberty. There is a specific transition phase in the game's code that shifts a child's model to an adult's model once they reach age 16, which is when their final facial features lock in. Lifestyle effects. If your character spends their life eating in feasts, they will physically grow heavier. If they are a warrior who has been wounded in battle, they might gain scars, which are also stored in the DNA portrait system. 4. Why it feels real. Because the game uses a continuous 3D coordinate system to build faces, you can often recognize members of your own dynasty. If you have a character with a very distinctively shaped nose, you will frequently see that same nose pop up in your grandchildren. A fun way to see this in action. If you go into the barbershop in the character menu, you can play with the appearance settings. While you can't manually edit the DNA string of a random NPC without console commands, you can see how different hairstyles or headgear change the read of those genetic features. It's essentially a simulated evolution engine. It doesn't just copy-paste a portrait, it tries to simulate the math of biological inheritance to give you a unique kid every time. Since you've been playing for a few years, have you ever noticed a dynasty look, like a specific nose or eye shape that keeps showing up in your heirs generation after generation?
Alright, boys, let's go to a strong man. What's it trying to simulate, though?
The genetic system in Crusader Kings 3 is designed to simulate dynastic continuity and asterisk biological legacy. While it looks like a simple character creator tool, the game is actually simulating the long-term weight of history. It isn't trying to be a perfect medical simulation, but rather a way to make your dynasty feel real over hundreds of years of gameplay. Here's what the game is trying to achieve with those systems. 1. The simulation of legacy. In many strategy games, your units are disposable. In CK3, you aren't just playing a king, you are playing a bloodline. The goal. By using a
Should make a
complex
little.
genetic system, the game ensures that your children don't just feel like random units. You can see your own character's traits, nose shape, or hair color appearing in your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The result, it creates a sense of attachment. When you see a genius heir finally born after 5 generations of careful marriages, it feels like a genuine achievement because the game's code actually remembered the ancestors you chose to pair together. 2. The fate of the realm. Emergent gameplay. The game uses genetics to add unpredictability to your plans. The goal. If the game were perfectly predictable, you would always have the perfect heir. By adding random elements to genetics, like the chance of a negative mutation or the hidden recessive genes, the game forces you to adapt. The result. Your perfect empire can be threatened by a sickly, inbred, or incapable heir. This forces you to make tough political decisions, like bypassing your own child in the line of succession, or dealing with a weak ruler, which creates the story the game is famous for. 3. The visual story. The DNA system ensures that characters look like they belong to their family, culture, and geographic region. The goal. It simulates the look of a people. If you marry a character from the Mediterranean into a Norse family, you will see that blend happen in the children's faces. The result, it makes the world feel alive and distinct. You can look at a court and, just by the facial features, get a hint of who is related to whom, or where a character's parents might have come from. It adds a layer of immersion that makes the map feel populated by real people, rather than generic icons. 4. Risk versus reward. The inbreeding logic. The simulation of inbreeding serves a specific gameplay purpose, limiting perfection. The goal. If there were no penalty for marrying relatives, every player would just keep their bloodline pure to keep the genius and beautiful traits forever. The result. By coding a decay into inbred lines, the negative traits and the risk of the inbred trait, the game forces you to venture out and marry people from other dynasties. It simulates the historical reality that ruling families had to form alliances with outsiders to keep their own lines healthy. In short, it is simulating human consequence. It makes the fact that you married a cousin, or a foreigner, or a genius from across the map have a physical, visible impact on your dynasty for the next 200 years. It turns genetics from a boring spreadsheet stat into a core part of the drama that eventually causes your empire to rise. Or, as you found out with the Roman Empire, causes it to shatter when the bloodline becomes unstable. Do you think the game's inbreeding penalty is too harsh? Or does it make the eugenics goal feel more rewarding because it's actually dangerous to pull off?
it makes it more unique.
It really is the secret sauce of Crusader Kings 3. Most strategy games treat your units or leaders as replaceable assets. When they die, you just recruit a new one. In CK3, that risk of inbred monstrosities or the struggle to keep a genius bloodline alive creates a narrative weight that other games just don't have. Because you have to constantly weigh the eugenic benefit, getting that genius or beautiful trait, against the biological risk, the inbred trait, you are effectively making role-play decisions about the fate of your dynasty, even when you're just looking at a menu screen. It turns your family tree into a character in its own right. Since you've experienced the pain of a crumbling Roman Empire and the unique danger of deep lineage breeding, do you feel like that added layer of risk makes you play more conservatively? Or does it push you to take even bigger, wilder gambles to see how far you can push your dynasty's bloodline?
How does skin color work in the game? How does skin color work in the game?
In Crusader Kings 3, skin color isn't a single button the game pushes. It is part of the same DNA blending system that governs facial structure, eye color, and hair. Here is how the game handles it. 1. It's part of the DNA string. Every character has a complex DNA code that dictates their physical appearance. Skin color is essentially a variable in that code. When a child is born, the game takes the skin color values from both parents and performs a mathematical blend, the average. If one parent has very dark skin and the other has very light skin, the game doesn't just pick one or the other. It calculates a value in between, which is why children of parents from different regions often show a visible mix of skin tones. Dormant/recessive genes. The game also simulates hidden genetic data. Every character carries 2 slots of DNA for their appearance, one from each parent. One slot is active, which you see on screen, and one is dormant, which they carry but don't show. This is why you might have 2 white parents produce a child with darker skin. That child may have inherited an active gene from a grandparent that was dormant in the parents. 2. Ethnicity and regional DNA. The game also ties skin color to ethnicity files. When the game generates a random character, like a courtier or a lowborn spouse, it pulls from a template based on their region. These templates have predefined ranges for skin color. This is why you'll see people in sub-Saharan Africa or India having skin tones that fit their region, while people in Scandinavia will have a different range. When you marry someone from a different part of the map, you aren't just marrying a character. You are introducing a completely new set of DNA ranges into your dynasty's bloodline, which is why multicultural dynasties often have a very diverse range of appearances. 3. Does it mean anything? Technically, no. In CK3, skin color is purely cosmetic. Unlike the congenital traits, like genius or Herculean, skin color doesn't give you stat bonuses or penalties. It doesn't affect diplomacy, warfare, or vassal opinion. However, players often treat it as a truth serum for succession. If your character and your spouse are both white and a child is born with dark skin, the game doesn't automatically trigger a "that's not your child" event, but it acts as a visual tell. Many players use the children's appearance to figure out if their spouse has been unfaithful. The game itself doesn't know you've been cheated on because of a baby's skin color. The AI isn't programmed to look at the kid and say, "Hey, that's not me." It acts as a massive hint to you, the player, why it feels so real. The reason you probably notice it is because the game is surprisingly good at blending these features. Because it isn't just picking from 10 pre-made skin tones, but using a continuous scale, a spectrum of values, you get a very smooth transition of skin tones across generations. It's one of the reasons the game's portrait system is considered so impressive. It avoids the clonish look of older strategy games. Have you ever had a situation where the DNA mix of a child resulted in something totally unexpected, like a kid who looked nothing like either parent?
He's a blood father. Oh, okay. I need to give him a little boost in the game. Canandra. Okay, they're just being fucking pansies. Okay, they're just fucking being pansies. Look at that. Boom! Like that. Like that. See right here, inbred trait. Okay, Green Hell. Okay. Green Hell VR character customizable update. New free characters customized options are here in Green Hell VR. Want to look even better? Check out our new brand clothing pack in the store. Anyway, anyways, guys, in 30 more minutes, I'm gonna leave this stream and just watch some trailer for us. Alright. Also, my dad is getting me the movie Stripes, so I can't wait for that. Stripes. And in 7 minutes, I gotta go eat some lunch. But my boy needs some ambition to make the greatest Canary Islands. No. You say, what the fuck is that, baby? Why does it look so fucking ugly? Boom! One big punch. Just kidding, guys. Just kidding, YouTube. 18,000. Okay, now we're in a power gap vacuum. Okay. We're in on case. We're non case. Two dudes under the sun. One second. One second. L Riz, bro. L Riz. What a Bulgarian guy. Monkey. Wait, you know what I can do? He's so successful. They're not bad kids. Little beach. It's gonna be a hideous child, let me guess. Probably is like getting laid. It's kind of a bug in the game where if you marry somebody, it kind of passes off at their own kids. Well, it did work this time. Yeah, that's ugly. Boom! We're gonna make this country great again.
I just watched the Gideon arrest and body.
All right, guys, I'm gonna